The American media and the bloggers, the mainstream media and the alternative media seem to be in a war. Who should American people trust? Who is the reliable source of information?
There is a war between the alternative media and the mainstream media. And you have thousands and thousands of sources in the alternative media. Some of it's true, some of it's lies. They all have agendas. And you have the government trying to infiltrate the blogs to put out their propaganda. The mainstream corporate media in the United States has proven they have an agenda to spin and lie and kind of dumb the information down. They lie by omission. The blogs are very diverse. Some of it's true, some of it's partially true, some of it's not true. But people are developing a sense and becoming more sophisticated, and they've learned that the alternative media is, on average, more accurate and delivers more diversity of thought and opinion than the mainstream media. And so the mainstream media is going bankrupt. TV's going bankrupt. The newspapers are going bankrupt. And it's not just because there's now the internet. It's because people have learned they have an agenda and are lying.
Then we're going to look at Ron Paul basically silenced at the CBS debate last night. Sure, on average, he gets about 4 minutes. The top candidate gets about 14. The other candidates get 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 minutes, depending on which other candidate you're talking about. Scientific studies have been done on it in the last few months. The Drudge Report has reported on it and others. Well, last night, Mitt Romney got more than 12 minutes. Ron Paul got 89 seconds. 89 seconds. So they let him in the debate, but for all intents and purposes, he's not there. But he still scored multiple hole-in-ones, out of the parks, grand slams, whatever you want to call it, Hail Marys, in the 2 times he got to talk. Combined time, 89 seconds. I mean, they had him down to 4 minutes and change in the debates. First, it was 6 minutes down to 4 minutes. There's been like 10 of these things now. They're very popular. Folks are really waking up politically and looking for answers. And he got 89 seconds. By the way, that report is up at drudgereport.com right now. One of the top stories there. If you want to go there, it's an easy place to find it. It's also at Infowars.com. He's linked to our posting on the subject at drudgereport.com if you'd like to find that. Drudge is always good at having things where they're easy to find. It's still on our front page, too, but our stuff scrolls off so fast. There it is. It's the top story, bottom top story in the top left-hand corner. Ron Paul gets 89 seconds to speak in debate. And we've got links to all the scientific studies and reports where Ron Paul gets the least amount of coverage, the least amount of time, and when he does, it's mainly negative. But on average, he gets about 4 minutes and 14 seconds in the studies we've got linked in a debate, in all the debates they've had. Well, now Ron Paul gets 89 seconds to speak in debate. Now CBS News has given him 89 seconds. And you can go look at Mitt Romney and the others, on average got more than 10 minutes. Ron Paul, in an hour-and-a-half debate, got 89 seconds. But he still did a great job in that time. But that shows you, and in every major poll, he's second, third, or fourth place. You actuary it together, he's number 3 going into number 2. That's it. You're at the debate, you get 89 seconds, buddy boy, with the cheers, 89 seconds. That's all the time you get. Now, Mitt Romney, 10-plus minutes. Everybody else, you get plenty of time because you're not a real threat. You're not intelligent. You're a bunch of teleprompter-reading political prostitutes that can't be trusted. If the American people don't vote for Ron Paul, well, we tried as best we could. We'll continue to fight on.
9 Republican presidential candidates squared off tonight in a debate hosted by Fox News and Google in Orlando, Florida. According to the latest Suffolk University poll, Mitt Romney is in the lead, with Ron Paul in second place at 14%. Joining me now is my friend and colleague, Fox News political analyst Juan Williams, author of Muzzled, The Assault on Honest Debate. You know we'll have honest debate here, my friend.
There you go.
All right, now, you got to tell me what you think of this headline in something called the Daily Caller. Quote, poll, Romney leads New Hampshire, Huntsman third, Perry fourth. Now, do they know how to count? Why would they omit saying who was in second?
Well, you know why? Ron Paul.
But is there a media bias against him? Just from the media's point of view, isn't he good for the media because he challenges Republican orthodoxy and causes debate and generates and stimulates the discussion about ideas that the other Republicans don't want to talk about?
Well, that's right. And it's because the other Republicans don't want to talk about it. It's because he is such an extraordinary candidate that the mainstream media doesn't pay attention. They don't believe that Ron Paul, with his libertarian bent, could actually be the GOP nominee. To the contrary, every time Ron Paul comes out, attracts huge crowds, gets numbers that are sufficient in the polls to say this could be your Republican nominee, there's a base of Republicans, but especially the mainstream media, that refuse to acknowledge. It's like he's standing in front of them and they say, I don't believe it. Don't believe it, not credible. I'm going to rub my eyes and see if I can. Oh, he's still there? Yeah, but who's first, who's third?
Is it a rejection of what he believes in? Is it just a perception that these numbers that we're seeing are not accurate and can't last?
Well, you know, part of the problem is that if you look at conventional mainstream Republican ideology, it's not isolationist. So some of the key issues that have erupted during our age, weapons of mass destruction, Iraq, Afghanistan, pursuit of Osama bin Laden, foreign aid, Israel, popped up this very week.
Right.
On all these fronts, what you hear for Ron Paul is contrary to Republican orthodoxy.
Okay,
Judge.
but you would agree with me, and obviously disagree if you feel inclined. The key issue is the economy.
Right.
No one has been stronger on what has caused these problems. No one has been more consistent. No one has done more to bring the Federal Reserve and money printing and central planning of economic activity into focus than Ron Paul. Is it possible Republicans and independents are recognizing that?
No, they're not recognizing it yet. And again, you know, what strikes me about this is I think Ron Paul is the father of the Tea Party, and in large part because of his criticism of U.S. economic policy and printing money, you know, willy-nilly, and saying that we are, in fact, out of control and we need to get back into some kind of very hard basis for currency. This is all Ron Paul. Okay. And saying spending is out of control and taxation is too much, and he's been back and forth with Perry in this debate and others about this issue. So here's what we know. In fact, he is, as you just described him, prescient when it comes to American economic problems, and yet people see him as, well, gee, that's Ron Paul. He's kind of, you know, curly-minded or curly-haired or whatever.
So now with Pawlenty dropping out, Rick Perry dropping in, and Michelle Bachmann and Ron Paul dominating the Ames straw poll, we got ourselves a race.
We have a top tier. It is Mitt Romney, Rick Perry, and Michelle Bachmann.
We have a new top tier, and it's Perry, Mitt Romney, and Bachmann.
There's now a top tier in this race, at least for now, of Romney, Perry, and Bachmann.
I mean, I think that's fair to say. Really fair to say? You're not forgetting, I don't know, anyone, say an ideologically consistent 12-term congressman who came within less than 200 votes of winning the straw poll? Isn't anyone going to give that gentleman a little love?
There's a top tier now of Bachmann and Perry and Romney, and, you know, we haven't mentioned, and we should.
Thank you.
We haven't mentioned, and we should, Rick Santorum, who did really surprisingly well for the amount of money and resources he had.
Rick Santorum? He didn't get half of what Ron Paul got. He lost to the guy who lost so bad he dropped out of the race. Santorum?
We're looking at Mitt Romney, who continues to be the front runner, but we have Rick Perry as well, and now Michelle Bachmann. Let's not count out Jon Huntsman, though.
What? Jon Huntsman? Huntsman got 69 votes. If all of Jon Huntsman's supporters met at the same Ames, Iowa Quiznos, the fire marshal would say, yeah, that's fine, no problem. There's still some tables open in the back. Huntsman was the only Mormon running in the straw poll, and he came in second amongst Mormons. And by the way, this pretending Ron Paul doesn't exist for some reason has been going on for weeks.
A new Gallup survey showing Rick Perry running second to Mitt Romney, knocking down Iowa favorite Michelle Bachmann to fourth.
Behind who? Fourth behind who? How did Libertarian Ron Paul become the 13th floor in a hotel? Why? What's wrong with, he is Tea Party patient zero. All that small government grassroots business, he planted that grass. These other folks, they're just moral majorities in a tri-cornered hat. Ron Paul's the real deal, and Fox News should love this guy. But watch the disconnect between the debate moderators at Fox's Thursday debate and the debate audience.
Iran does not have an air force that can come here, just like we did in Iraq. Build up the war propaganda. There was no Al-Qaeda in Iraq, and they had nuclear weapons, and we had to go in. I'm sure you supported that war as well. Yeah. Okay. It's time we quit this. It's time. It's trillions of dollars we're spending on these wars.
What's with the smirk and the eye roll? The guy gives it, the crowd goes nuts, and you do one of these. There goes crazy Uncle Ron, babbling about the unsustainability of multiple wars. He's the one guy in the field, agree with him or don't agree with him, who doesn't go out of his way to regurgitate talking points or change what he believes to fit the audience he's in front of. And you're treating him like if this were Celebrity Apprentice, he'd be this guy. By the way, at the Ames, Iowa straw poll, Busey beat Huntsman 77-69. And even when the media does remember Ron Paul, it's only to reassure themselves how there's no need to remember Ron Paul.
Right now, live, right next to the bus behind us, Ron Paul is speaking. And 7 of the candidates are here today. We have live pictures of Ron Paul, but you know what? We're talking about Sarah Palin, we're talking about Rick Perry, the two people not in the race yet, Drew.
And guess what, Paul? If you get video of Sarah Palin or get a soundbite from her, bring that back to us. You can hold the Ron Paul stuff.
What's next? I'll tell you what's next. Ron Paul. Ron Paul. I'm not a big fan of Jon Stewart, but I love the fact that Jon Stewart finally shined a light on Ron Paul. The media doesn't want to talk about this guy. Ron Paul is the only presidential candidate who's actually going to get our troops out of the Middle East. He's the only presidential candidate who's going to bring our troops home, put them on our borders, and secure this country. Ron Paul's the only guy who's going to stop sending money to the Middle East in the forms of bribes. Ron Paul's the only guy who's going to fix the economy and create jobs in this country. Ron Paul's the only guy who hasn't flip-flopped on every issue in the last 30 years. Ron Paul's the only guy who speaks from the heart instead of from a teleprompter or a bunch of talking points written on a piece of paper. Why doesn't the media want to talk about Ron Paul? I'll tell you why. Because he doesn't have a fancy haircut and a slick suit. This country is more concerned with packaging than it is with substance. Ron Paul is a magna cum laude candidate in a community college world. Ron Paul is Happy Days when all we want to watch is the Jersey Shore. Ron Paul is Superman and we keep electing Hong Kong Phooey and Captain Caveman. Don't you get it? I mean, the media doesn't want to talk about Ron Paul. Democrats and Republicans both want you to believe this guy is not a viable candidate. Why? Because Ron Paul's the only person who's going to look out for you. All these other candidates are looking out for themselves and their freaking party. I mean, Ron Paul's not supported by the media. He's not supported by the Democrats. He's not supported by the Republicans. That tells me